Thank you for joining us on this really a path-breaking panel that has come together. And I'm actually truly humbled by the fact that I could line up Jim Breyer, Dipender, Saluja, and Anshu Sharma, three people that I deeply admire, three people that are friends, and people who I know are at the leading edge of technology, the sort of people who are creating new frontiers in the valley. And so this is good. It's actually promising us to be one of the most interesting panels that I've ever put together. So I'll start with Dipender here on my right, who is the managing director of Capricorn Investment Group based in Palo Alto. He has been, Capricorn manages about $5 billion in assets and strives for extraordinary investment results by leveraging market forces to accelerate large-scale impact. Capricorn's investment process grounded in comprehensive perspectives on long-term global trends in tech, energy, healthcare, transportation, and agriculture. Some of Capricorn's past and current investments include Tesla, Planet Labs, SpaceX, QuantumScape, Innovium, Twitter, Vitamin Water, and Helion Energy. Prior to Capricorn, Dipender was chief of staff at Cadence, and the rest is history. Anshu, who is currently the CEO of Prekari Labs, he is a serial entrepreneur who is completely unstoppable. He is the one who we all dream of meeting someday, the crazy entrepreneur who is 24/7, doesn't sleep, is churning out one company after another and exiting them beautifully. So that's Anshu Sharma there. And Jim Breyer, I think, needs no introduction. He's been a hero for so many of us, just, wanting to get a few minutes with him. And so I think we're just so lucky to have Jim here. Jim is the founder and CEO of Breyer Capital, a premier venture capital firm based in Menlo Park. And he's been an early investor in over 40 technology companies that most of you know. He's completed highly successful public offerings and mergers. As a lead investor and director, many of these investments have returned well over 100 times their cost, and over a dozen more have returned well over 25 times their cost. Jim is also a co-chairman of IDG Capital based in Beijing, with offices in Beijing, Guangzhou, Hangzhou, Hong Kong, and Shanghai. Jim currently serves on the board of directors of Blackstone and has previously served as an investor or a lead director in 21st Century Fox, Dell, Etsy, Facebook, Marvel Entertainment, and Walmart. So without any further ado, what I would like to do is really kind of put these guys into a bit of a squeeze. And here is what I thought would be really, because I can't imagine mining better minds for this. So folks, is software really history? If so, we might as well shut down most of TiE-related activity and go home. But I am beginning to suspect that software is kind of history. Software as a service, for example, is simply a delivery mechanism, a business model, right? It was new 15 to 25 years ago when Salesforce pioneered it. Now it is actually quite standard. A startup can't differentiate itself by saying, oh, we do XYZ as a service. We just really cannot deliver. It's not even exciting anymore. And even for venture capital, it's not that exciting anymore. Similarly, I used to think, would AI and ML maybe be the few kind of, aspects of software that could save software, that could still keep software relevant. But no, I don't think so. AI and ML these days, the more we look at these startups, they're becoming a feature that will get embedded in every software. Sure, there are opportunities to build a small startup doing AI and ML for XYZ and then selling it to Google or Amazon or Facebook. But will it build a next $1 to $10 billion company? I'm not so sure. I'm not seeing any product verticals that are untapped or underinvested yet. I doubt that you can build another massive company doing e-commerce or advertising or social media or even cloud computing or even CRM. So then what next? Dippy, I'm going to start with you. First of all, do you agree that software might be history?
Well,
and if so, would you be marrying it with hardware? So I'm going to pin you as the hardware guy, Jim as the software guy, and Anshu as the middle ground. Let's see what happens.
So you just made my job easier by that introduction. I think it's an interesting, provocative statement. But I'll actually go to a very important question you asked at the end, which is, what do you do, and what are the next big things? I think you make a good point that a lot of what we've done over the last 15 years are things that are becoming ubiquitous, are becoming embedded, are becoming parts of it. And so I think the best thing to do is what Silicon Valley has always done, which is make new things. And by making new things, utilize all of that great stuff that's going on in semiconductors, all of the stuff that's going on in software, AI, ML, et cetera, and build new products. And the intersection of technology and opportunities to build are huge. Jack talked about some of those exciting areas. So whether it's food, whether it's transportation, whether it's energy, whether it's healthcare, I think those are incredibly exciting areas. And they have a lot more longevity. They have a lot more need. You have billions of consumers of that around the world, and everybody's looking for better, faster, cheaper, more powerful things. So
okay, Jim,
I think building new things is...
Let's see, Jim, what you have to say about software.
Thank you for calling me a software guy as opposed to a venture capitalist.
No, venture capitalist.
It's a great
the
pleasure.
last person he's the first person who could actually easily rescue software, if it could be. But tell us.
It's a pleasure to be here. We are just in the very early innings of next generation software development. And again, you're going to hear a lot about AI and why AI is so fundamental as an investment category, why it's so fundamental for all of us here. And I'll just reflect on a couple of my recent travels. I was in India in December for 10 days, visiting IITs in several parts of India. I was at the MIT AI launch a couple months ago. I am part of the Stanford AI program that was launched a month ago. I have never seen such interdisciplinary opportunities in an area that is emerging as not only an area for entrepreneurship, but an area for students, for postdocs, for professors. So I'm 2 years into a 10-year plan on investing in AI. It's global, and so it will occur at academic centers in the US, academic centers in India, and academic centers in China. And there are various races that we all know, but what is different is I have never seen a field where interdisciplinary skills in startups are so important. And so in several of the new companies that I've invested in Cambridge, Massachusetts, or here in Palo Alto and Menlo Park, we have neurosurgeons, we have brain scientists, we have computer scientists, we have ethicists, linguistics, all integrated in many of these startups, because to get AI right for startup and technology investing, when we're competing for talent with the great companies, Alphabet, Google, Amazon, Facebook, Apple, Microsoft, I could go on and on, the scarcity is the talent, and the scarcity is the interdisciplinary skills where software, hardware, where biology, computing all come together, and there has to be an agreement at the board level, has to be an agreement within the entrepreneurial community, agreement between physicians who are trying to eradicate much of cancer in our lifetime, agreement with those physicians, and the 28-year-old superstars who are ex-Google or Facebook. So that's why I'm so excited in investing right now, and I think we're just at the beginning of many of the most compelling investment opportunities in these various fields. But coming back to software, if there isn't deep excellence and almost genius in using many of the open source tools that Google and others are providing, and figuring out how to make it worldwide from day one, there's no chance, I would argue, that you are going to one day see massive market cap built. It's the integration of these skills which have not come together in many ways. And we all know within academic centers, the very best, Stanford, Harvard, MIT, IIT, silos need to be broken. And that's certainly true in many of the new startups that are fundamental new AI breakthroughs where the silos simply cannot exist. Otherwise, there will be a team somewhere in Mumbai or Bangalore or Palo Alto or Cambridge that executes more quickly, more fundamentally, and develops the next breakthroughs. Thank you.
Jim, before I go to Anshu, one quick question. Is Breyer Capital something that is going to be focusing on these multidisciplinary kind of, boundaries between, powered by AI?
I spend about 80% of my time visiting professors, postdocs, AI leaders from industry, academics, and I also believe it's very global, which is why I'm traveling often to India, to the southern Bay Area of China, and of course in and around Menlo Park, Palo Alto, Cupertino, Santa Clara. This is still and will always be the center of technical innovation, in my humble opinion.
Absolutely.
I'm often asked, why Silicon Valley with the cost as high for housing as it is? Why will Silicon Valley remain the center of so much of AI and interdisciplinary technology development? We're all here because we know why. There's a magic, there's an urgency, there's an entrepreneurial spirit that is unrivaled anywhere in the world.
So Anshu, unlike Dippy and Jim, you have been in the guts of various startups, and you are the youngster who's always tinkering with the boundaries of what's happening, and you're doing an AI startup right now, which, by the way, I'm involved with. I'm honored to be involved with, actually. And so Anshu, tell us what you think about, what do you think is this whole, is software dying, or is it going to be irrelevant? I mean, so I'm not saying it's dying, it's going to be irrelevant, just open source.
So I think there's two perspectives. One is the top-down perspective, and I'll speak less of that and more the bottom-up. But the top-down perspective is very simple. I think invisible and vertical. So look at electricity. We're still trying to figure out how to use electricity better. Like, if we're going to ever figure out how to desalinate more water, electricity will be involved. If we're going to figure out how to make diseases go away, electricity will be involved. One of the biggest challenges in Africa is there's no electricity, and that's like 150 years in. I think the same is true for software. We are barely starting the era where software is not so hard that you need a genius just to configure one computer and run one machine. Like this morning, we had a coordination issue, right? I will think that software and AI is solved when we're setting up a panel, automatically AI figures out who's coming at what time. Just the number of problems that currently exist are mind-boggling, both at the mega scale, which is, India right now is going through its elections, and one of the biggest challenges India has to face in the next 10 years is how to employ 1 billion people. Now, it's not that these 1 billion people are not trying to study hard or not trying to do the right thing, but they can't find jobs. Meanwhile, how many of us trying to hire people? Now, what's this fundamental disconnect between 1 billion people who want to get jobs and billions of jobs that are actually in theory available, but they can't access? It's an information exchange problem. In fact, Prekari Labs, we are in stealth right now, so we won't talk about exactly what we do, but we are focused on two problems. One is data sharing, and the other is fixing the privacy problem. And so if you just take the privacy problem, right, it's going to be solved by software. We all know, or some of us know, how many thousands of people currently work for Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube in this country as well as in low-cost countries, just trying to figure out, killing himself, not killing himself, killing himself, not killing. That's not going to scale. That's not how we're going to solve any of these problems. And Jack Hidary this morning actually, he's been focused at X on some of these challenges. All of these problems will require software, AI, interdisciplinary thinking. And so the way I think about this is vertical, which simply means solve the problem, right? So forget about AI, forget about biology, forget about anything else. We have so many effing problems in this world, right? starting with the basic problems of making people just talk nicer to each other on Facebook and Twitter, to the problems of tens of millions of people dying. And all of that is unnecessary suffering that we can get rid of if we just could deploy software at scale and make it intelligent. Actually, I'll take half not stupid software as much as I'll take this thing. So, an example is if I send, a message to the wrong person, today you can't even figure it out, right? That's what Clayton is focused on. But why are these things that maybe a 6-year-old could figure out? If I told a 6-year-old kid, hey, go talk to Asha, he's not going to randomly pick another Asha and start talking to him. But if I start typing an email address in my Gmail or Office, and I say Asha, there may be 7 other Ashas. You're the best Asha, but doesn't know that. Anyway, so that's my point of view. Yeah.
So, speaking of, Facebook and Twitter and sort of, the whole question of sort of fake news and, this very uncivil conversations that go on, what do you guys think is the responsibility of some of these huge social platforms to make sure that the moral responsibility of what goes out, the content that goes out, which could lead to, entire massive refugee crisis and things like that. To what extent do you think that these large platforms should be responsible? Should they take responsibility for this?
This one
Does
first.
the moral authority sit with these platforms, given that they are enabling things which are very good, but there are also things which are very bad, and people
I'll make this easier for Jim. I'll start the answer here. So I believe that the simplistic answer is that it's all Facebook and Twitter's fault. But the reality is, just imagine if we took those things away, right? Do you think Fox News wouldn't exist? Do you think in India some of these channels spewing hate wouldn't exist? I think it's very simplistic to say there's this magical network and that can magically solve the problem. Just forget for a moment that Facebook is some big giant company that we can't talk to. If I made you a fairy or a CEO, what would you do? How do you decide? Suppose I say Jim Breyer is stupid because he doesn't understand AI is bad for society. Now, is that hate speech? Should it be banned? What if I said, therefore, let's gang up and protest against his house? And where is the line? When I say protest against him in front of his house, here is the address of his house, here is the address of his office. Like, how do you decide? And things that we humans can't decide, companies can't solve either. So I take a very charitable view. I think the answer to Facebook and Twitter is not Facebook and Twitter. The answer to that is us as human beings figuring out what is civil discourse and then making norms and laws about it. And then Facebook has to follow those norms.
What do you think, Jim? You've probably been in the guts of all of this, and you have a view of things that most of us don't have. So please tell us what your thinking is there.
Well, it's also so important to learn from the evolution, the astonishing evolution of Facebook, Google, Instagram, and others, because we're sitting here at the birth of AI, and it's why it's so important to build in ethics, diversity, female-led founding organizations. I could go on and on. Boy, we did a lot that we wish we could do over at Facebook. When I met Mark, he was 20. I invested when Mark was still 20 in April 2005. He'll have a birthday coming up this week. One of the best decisions I've ever made is helping Mark and very actively helping Facebook recruit Sheryl Sandberg, who's a personal hero. I've had dinner with Sheryl twice in the last month. She is extraordinary, and all the instincts that Sheryl and Mark have now in terms of what to do and what kinds of resources to use to address much of what has gone wrong, I think they're doing it. It's just when you're at 2 billion plus users, the complexity around the world. When I was in Mumbai, every other block had a Netflix or an Amazon video, or of course there's WhatsApp as the standard messaging, and Instagram technologies. It's so worldwide It's so global. The Facebooks, the Googles, the Amazons, all Apples need to continue to invest dramatically to change the trajectory of privacy and security. Much of that will be through AI and technology, in my humble view, but much of it is hiring excellent people, and lots of them, because there's no AI yet that's going to provide the full privacy and security solution that we would all hope for. Again, just as a long-term investor's perspective in Facebook, and long-time board member, but these are issues I will just offer that we are just beginning to face in the world of AI and cancer, or AI and healthcare. I have several investments in spin-outs of Stanford, Memorial Sloan Kettering, Harvard Medical School. Who owns the data? Is it the specialist physician? Is it the general physician? Is it the patient? Is it a technology company? Is it an insurance company? How are we going to manage so much of what will be very fundamental worldwide around security and privacy when it comes to our medical data? And on one hand, we want the AI to help doctors, patients, specialists inform better medical decisions, whether it's cancer, whether it's very specialized computational pathology, prostate cancer, breast cancer, I could go on and on. These are just the issues that in board meetings and in startups at Stanford, Cal, Harvard, spin-outs, these are the ethical issues of the day when it comes to building the next generation of AI, in my humble opinion. And I would add again, we did not do a good job in the last 20 years in Silicon Valley of building deep diversity in the startups. I believe there will be female-led, diverse startups that will perform extraordinarily well, and so much of the AI opportunity is for all of us to figure out how do we change the nature of AI and technology so that it's much more diverse than what we have seen historically in Silicon Valley.
Dippy, before I let you go into that question, tell me something just to sort of, build upon what Jim and Anshu just talked about. So do you think that there is such a thing as, so the internet and the sort of the realm of technology, sometimes we feel like we have created it here in the West. Is there ever a question that comes up where we say we actually have the power to shut down things that could create discord on the planet? If we have the power to dig in, do you think the players like Facebook and Google and other software companies are stretching themselves beyond their ethical boundaries when they say we could, shut off certain activities that are happening globally that could disrupt global peace? Do you think is it even a question that any of you guys think about as you look at big companies and small companies actually?
So we think about stuff like that every day because, as you know, one of our mandates is to invest profitably, but invest in things that are good for the world. And we've had a lot of fun doing that for the last 15 years and plan to do it for the next many decades. I think talking about what Anshu and Jim talked about, it is a complicated world. I mean, for all of you who know the history of computers, the first purpose for computers was to build good missiles. That was what led to the real development of computing. And obviously, we've taken computing and taken it to a whole bunch of other things. So, we will always be building better tools, and we will always have great applications of new tools, and there will be bad applications of tools. I think the one thing I would say is, to your point, that here in Silicon Valley, what can we do about it? I think product companies do have the responsibility to think about how to maximize good users of these tools and minimize bad users of these tools. Not to be flippant about it, but let's say you were a truck company and you were building great trucks. Now, you're not going to be able to prevent a suicide bomber from using your truck and use it as a suicide bomb. But imagine if a truck company said, you know what, suicide bombers are a great vertical. Let me design trucks so that I can sell them to suicide bombers, and I'll have a great market.
Yeah.
That would be absurd. And I would say this is not very far from the kinds of conversations that we were having. Asha and I and a bunch of people in the audience were at TED a couple of weeks ago, and this was the main conversation there, which is, yes, it is very hard to do the kinds of things that Jim just talked about at a manual level. You're not going to monitor 2 billion people talking every second with a bunch of people sitting in a call center. This is going to have to be technology. That it is technology that build those tools. It's technology that is going to have to solve that. But it is the responsibility of us as product companies to build the tools to make sure that our trucks are not first and foremost suicide bomber trucks, but they're trucks that are used for what trucks were built for.
Yeah, but think about it. I love that we are self-reflecting and this and that. This is great, and none of us should say software companies, but I have a very radically different view on this. I think we should all look at this in the context of all the industries in the world, right? One of the biggest industries in this country is not Facebook or Amazon or Google. It's our defense industry. You know how many guns and missiles and bombs we produce today? Where are the protests against that? Then talk about media, right? There's Fox News and a dozen others. Then there's newspapers that are owned by the bad guys. And then there is pharmaceutical companies, which one would think are the greatest, do-gooder companies, but apparently they're selling drugs, basically. $17 billion worth of drugs sold in West Virginia in 1 year, apparently. So I think I love that we want to be improving, but I'm afraid that by being so openly self-reflecting, and it's almost become like fashionable to beat up on ourselves, because then it's kind of like a virtue signaling thing. Oh my God, if we just shut down Facebook, we would be so great. The investors in Facebook are piling on. I'm surprised Jim Breyer is the only Facebook investor who hasn't written an op-ed that says Facebook should be broken up already. I think it's just silly. We have bigger problems. Our biggest problem is people didn't vote. And that problem can be solved by using blockchain, AI, mobile. Our biggest problem is people are killing each other. We can solve that problem actually registering the guns using a database, right? So I feel like it's kind of mislabeling to say it's all Facebook's problem. Just imagine a thought experiment. We can all abstract agree that bad things should not be spoken and blah, blah, blah. Imagine trying to shut down Donald Trump or Bernie Sanders or Prime Minister Modi or Rahul Gandhi or any of these people's Twitter account. You know what will happen? Riots. So
of course,
what should Facebook and Twitter do? I mean, they are not going to be the ones who have to make these decisions. We can't even ban guns. How are we going to ban a Twitter account of a president?
No, absolutely. So, Anshu, I think to your point about there are many other worse problems that are going on right now. Technology has always, we technologists have always felt that we have somehow had the, sort of the moral high ground to say technology can actually solve some of these problems, like lack of communication.
Cleared in my company, it's building a business communications trust staff. What is that? How do companies trust each other better? But can I solve the problem of one of those people being, I don't know, like Lockheed Martin? No, that's a legitimate legal company. The largest manufacturer of guns and opioids in this country are legal entities. They're allowed to operate with all the laws.
Right.
And they can donate, by the way, hundreds of millions of dollars.
True. No, I think, listen, these are all sort of, monster problems that we as a civilization are dealing with. But for now, for today, so let's assume that software is not irrelevant. I mean, it's not irrelevant, but it is becoming commodity and is becoming open source. So as you guys think of startups that you want to create, going forward, this is something I want you to keep on your radar. I'm going to start with Dipender now. About, do you think that, as companies like WhatsApp, or maybe even SpaceX, right, which are looking at launching satellites and so on, do you think they could impact telecommunications as a whole industry and put it into a different, different category altogether? Do you think telecommunications could actually be be taken down by companies like SpaceX and WhatsApp?
I don't know if you would say it would be taken down. I think it would be taken to the next level.
In the next few years, though.
Yeah,
you know?
and it'll be taken to the next level. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about whether doing better telecom or more telecom or cheaper telecom using space is going to happen. It is going to happen. It is happening today. We've invested in companies that are doing that today. We'll look at companies every few weeks that plan to do that. You heard what X is doing in it. So yes, it is. If you ask, I don't know about taking down, because they don't need to take it down. It would just be disrupting that with new technologies. Yeah, and you're going to see coverage like you've never seen before. You're going to see speed at which this is deployed like never before. And by the way, it is going to help things like security tremendously, because you will be able to use all this innovation that we are talking about by owning.
So you guys are investing in space quite heavily, right,
Yes.
Dipender? So is that something that is that on your radar, which is to sort of say, look, this is going to be something that will bring, for example, Wi-Fi to the last, last mile at
Absolutely.
very
In
low
fact,
cost?
it is from a revenue and growth point of view, it is a very meaningful portion of aerospace coming here in the near future. Yeah.
Jim, what thoughts on this?
I have not made an investment in space, but I've looked at a number, and for a venture capitalist, capital efficiency, of course, is so dramatically important in terms of generating returns, and that would be true for the startup team. So there are areas that Jack talked about. There are areas like quantum computing today, which in my mind, no doubt, will be revolutionary. But Google, Microsoft, big academic centers, IBM, they can spend $1 billion on quantum computers and largely generate long-term return if they end up being a top 3 quantum computing company. And as a venture capitalist, the quantum professors, the quantum deals I've looked at simply right now look far too capital intensive to make outstanding returns as a venture capitalist.
Time for a Breyer Vision Fund?
Exactly. And I think what is so exciting, there are, whether it's neural networks, quantum computing, the intersection of physics and biology, these are tremendous opportunities, but that doesn't mean that they are tremendous investment opportunities for venture capitalists or entrepreneurs. They may be exceptional opportunities for great companies when we talk about space, like what Jeff Bezos is doing. And I visited his team. He has 400 exceptional engineers just as a starting point. As a venture capitalist, I commend Jeff. I joked with Jeff and I said, I'm going to sit this one out. I'm going to allow you and SpaceX and in quantum, Microsoft and others, Alphabet, Google, invest the billions of dollars. Our job as venture capitalists and entrepreneurs is to take advantage of these massive new horizontal platforms and find our way into certain verticals like healthcare AI or fintech and build, hopefully, very capital efficient models. Again, that's the world of a venture capitalist who invests globally in the US, India, and China. And capital efficiency is so much part of the challenge in this world where capital is essentially free in the late stages, and the best 20 companies in the world are likely to be among the best 20 companies in the world because of their leadership 10 years from now.
I think these possibilities of space becoming a new frontier for telecommunications or space becoming a new frontier for travel, for commercial travel. I think these are things that are going to open up opportunities for the next generation of entrepreneurs in the next, I would say, in a decade or so.
I think our job is to build the apps, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think, again, I don't have hundreds of millions of dollars to deploy. So from my perspective, very simple. It's like Jio in India, right? If 5G becomes universally available, you'll see more Netflix-like things. So who's going to build that? If you're going to have space travel enabled, that means people will be traveling more. So entrepreneurs are going to build the next price line for booking space travel. It's highly unlikely we'll be building the spaceships. So I think at a user level, much more than the systems level. Of course, it's important to know what's going on. But our job is to find out, like, oh, now that this thing has been solved, quantum computing, space travel, bandwidth, what are the problems that were previously unsolved that can be solved now? I think the focus has to be on problems, especially for entrepreneurs.
So, Anshu,
right?
let me start with you now on the content in that case, right? Is content sort of the next big, sort of a tsunami that's arising right now? Because you find content that is produced with very low cost in things like, in fact, even in Bollywood, which is now being streamed out of Netflix and Amazon Prime. So what do you guys think there? Anshu, why don't you start and then we come to...
So I think, again, content, these are... I just have a slightly allergic reaction to abstract thinking, even though I love abstract thinking, which is because when you start thinking of things like content, software, back in the day, remember when RFID was a big thing and .com, it kind of misleads you because you start allocating capital to categories. As an entrepreneur, you start chasing, I'm going to be a content entrepreneur, or I'm going to be an AI entrepreneur. And that, I think, is very misleading. What is true is we are having an explosion of user-generated content. The reason it's happening is because of infinite bandwidth at basically zero price. And our job is to say, in that world, what are the tools, technologies, and problems that we can attack? So from my perspective, this content-rich world means that, for example, if you have a sick parent who happens to be in a foreign country, 15, 20 years ago, you remember most Indians would say, oh, I have to take a year or two break. Sometimes people's careers would end because they would be executives at, say, a large software company. They would go back and spend a couple of years making sure before the parents kind of passed away. And now we can be on FaceTime. And what does FaceTime plus VR plus AR plus telemedicine plus healthcare AI enable so that I can take care of my aging parents while sitting here? And to me, that's transformational. And people who will attack that problem, solve that problem, will both earn capital from Jim and frankly build the next big company. Amazon was not built because Jeff Bezos sat down and said, what does the internet enable, blah, blah, blah. He did a little bit, but he basically said, what's the problem I can solve now? And he said, book catalogs. And eBay said the same thing. Actually, catalogs was the answer to half the problems in 1996.
So, Jim
May I just quickly jump on the content side? Because
30 seconds each, both of you, because those guys are waving something at me.
Absolutely. I love investing in content. I was so fortunate to be an investor board member of Marvel Entertainment. Disney, of course, bought us. I visited Star India on the December trip. I've been a long time, was a board member of 21st Century Fox. Disney bought us, of course, closed a month ago. What is happening is Netflix and Amazon Video have changed the nature of content, and scale has been redefined, which is why Disney, Marvel, 21st Century Fox are now one. But what a phenomenal worldwide opportunity for entrepreneurs and investors, where we now have the streaming services, those who are creative. It's a golden era for many of them, whether it was Star TV India or Still or in West Los Angeles. So I'm very excited in content investment opportunities where content technology sit right at the intersection of what the next forms of worldwide entertainment might look like.
So I'll be a little bit of an outlier, and I'll start by reminding you all of one of my favorite quotes from an entrepreneur who said, we were promised jetpacks and flying cars, and all we got was 140 characters. It is, if the objective is to make money, there are many ways to make money. You can set up a corner shop and make money. Whether you set up that corner shop on the internet or you set up that corner shop on a street, you're setting up a corner shop. We have to make things, and making things is a great way of making money. And I would disagree that it's not the role of venture capital to help people make things. We've just seen in the last 15 years, the most sacred of cows, which was the automotive industry, is getting turned completely upside down by a venture-backed company called Tesla. Transportation is not going to be anything like what it was 20 years ago. Detroit is not going to be anything like what it was 20 years ago because of that venture-backed company. Space, which was almost unheard of, Asha brought it up, is getting disrupted by a venture-backed company. Music got disrupted by a venture-backed company. Telecommunications got disrupted by a venture-backed company. So I would say, if you have great ideas, if you have ideas that require capital and truly build something differentiated, go out and do it, and you will find the capital.
Well, thank you so much. This is such a stellar panel that we've had at TiEcon, and I'm so grateful that you could all make it. And, well, you guys have information for all of them, including Jack. So